Is LSU about to sign the greatest class in program history? We're 2 weeks from the early signing period, and we've got everything you need to know. It's next on Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, where you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Our buddy Shea Dixon from On3, the Bengal Tiger, stops by, and this is going to be an entirely recruiting episode. And I know the way this works. For many fans, you only pay attention to recruiting when you have to pay attention to recruiting. Well, we are 2 weeks from the early signing period and what will be the most consequential class that Brian Kelly signs, and also could be the greatest signing class that LSU ever puts pen to paper. Now, I want to give you some context here because On3 this week updated their class rankings. So keep in mind, this is now, they've got a few left to go, but this is now after most senior years are done. And so we're nearing the final rankings. Something On3 does is they name 32 5-stars, as if you were naming 32 first-round picks in the NFL draft is kind of the way they see it, how they would project this. So only 32 players will be named 5-stars. And there's some updates. So DJ Pickett is the number 6 player in the country, already committed to LSU, 5-star. Harlem Berry, the number 18 player in the country, already committed to LSU. Cade Phillips, hat tip to our guy Shea Dixon, who for months has said Cade Phillips out of Missouri City, Texas, flipped from Texas to LSU, would end up a 5-star. He is number 23 and a newly minted 5-star by On3. So that's 2 5-star cornerbacks in this class for LSU. Jahkeem Stewart, 5-star, the number 25 player in the country. Remember, reclassified from 2026 to 2025. And LSU is very much in the mix there. And of course, the number 1 overall prospect in the country is quarterback Bryce Underwood, who is already committed to LSU. So if you're scoring at home, that's Bryce Underwood, DJ Pickett, Harlem Berry, Cade Phillips. That is 4 5-stars from On3. They tie with Ohio State for the most 5-stars, the only 2 programs with 5-stars with 4 5-stars. And if LSU lands Jahkeem Stewart, that would be 5 5-stars for LSU. That would most certainly be a record for an LSU class. You could go back to some of the great classes in LSU history. The 2 that are most frequently mentioned are 2009 and 2011. 2009 was loaded with players like Ruben Randall, Chris Davenport, who is a 5-star, Chris Falk, Benny Logan, Craig Lawson, who is a 5-star, Barkevius Mingo, Kevin Minter, Sam Montgomery, Russell Shepard, who is the number 1 dual threat quarterback in the country, Michael Brockers, who went on to become a first-round draft pick, Morris Claiborne, Akeem Hicks. You get the picture. That the 2009 class was arguably the greatest in LSU history. 2011, which they affectionately refer to as the FAM, was kind of also considered in that mix as well. That was Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham, Lyle Collins, that amazing class back in 2011 that became such a cornerstone of those great LSU teams as well. So this class is certainly in the running there and could very well surpass them. Now, one of the things that I think is certainly interesting with LSU and how they're putting this class together, keep in mind, for all the conversations we have had about LSU lagging behind in NIL, which are very legitimate, a couple of things have happened that have thrust LSU forward. Number one is very clearly LSU underspent last year. They underspent. I've told you this on the record before. I'll repeat it for those that don't recall. You might wonder how LSU ended up somewhat in the scenario that they did this year with the roster, in particular, say, at defensive tackle. And we're going to remind you of the calendar and how things happen. So the season ended a year ago, and players like Mason Smith and Mekhi Wingo had a decision to make, in particular on the defensive line. And it looked like LSU was going to land Bo Davis from Texas. And you might remember that Bo Davis sent out a tweet that he was staying in Texas. Well, a few days after that, Wingo and Smith declared for the draft. A week later, LSU re-engaged with Bo Davis, and they ultimately landed him, but it was too late for Wingo and for Smith, who had already declared for the draft, and their mind was made up. Now, LSU offered both of those players $500,000 each to return. That was going to be their payout from the collective, which, by the way, is what Will Campbell makes as the highest paid player on this year's team. Ultimately, that money didn't get spent. And LSU missed that first portal window last year at defensive tackle, which meant after spring, when that second portal window opened, they were desperate. You remember, they went hard after Dominic Williams from TCU, who ended up at Oklahoma. They went after Simeon Barrow from Michigan State, who ended up at Miami, and they missed. Outlandish NIL numbers that they didn't want to pay, could have paid, but didn't want to pay. And ultimately, they landed JVR Suggs. So Gio Paez, JVR Suggs is who you landed out of the portal, and you didn't get a real impact starter at those positions. And it's very clear. There's other spots where you needed more impact guys. You signed guys out of the portal, but you didn't sign as many big impact guys out of the portal. And that's where they're going to change this year. Clearly, you don't land 4 and potentially 5 five-star players without a healthy NIL package. I mentioned there was 2 things. One was the recognition that you underspent a year ago. You should have spent more. Number 2 is when the Tiger Athletic Foundation took over fundraising efforts for Bayou Traditions, LSU's collective, that dramatically catapulted LSU's fundraising efforts because fans were able to get Tiger Athletic Foundation TAF points by donating to the collective. And that engaged the $5 and $10 and $20 and $100,000 donor, whereas LSU had really been relying on 15 to 20 people total that had been funding the entire collective. They were able to broaden their donor base and dramatically ratchet up the amount raised. So what I have said comfortably and confidently, and I am 100% confident in my information, while I will not tell you a dollar amount, what I will say is in 2025, LSU will spend more than double on that roster than they did in 2024. And this is pre-rev share. So LSU is in a very good place to finish this class strong and to be buyers in the transfer portal. Now, the player everyone is most interested in, of course, is Bryce Underwood. So here's Shea Dixon from On 3, the Bengal Tiger, with the absolute latest on Bryce Underwood, especially considering now this 3-game losing streak from LSU and the ratcheted up attention from Michigan.
They're going to do anything they can to hold on to him. This is your number 1 player. This is someone that's a program changer. This is a not once in a lifetime at all, or a decade even, but I think that most analysts, recruiting analysts, I know ours, think that he's the best quarterback in recent classes, and that includes Nico and other guys, and one of the best over the past decade, certainly. He can run it. He can throw it. He's 6'4". He's got every hand measurement to anything that you want, speed-wise, athleticism he's got. He processes so well. He's the total package, and you can't let that go in the end when he's been committed this long and very clearly wants to be here. And they've done a lot of work to set this one up. So I think we're just in the stages right now, Matt, and you can add to this if you feel, because I know that you're privy, not to just recruiting and Bryce, but just how this world is working, that you've got to now have paperwork that, attorneys look over and all of these different things. I mean, remember when this all started, Nick Saban was the first one to come out and say, nobody sign anything without a third party looking at it that ain't your coach and that ain't your mom and that ain't your dad and somebody else. And obviously now a couple of years into the NIL era, that's pretty commonplace. And I think once they get past that, which they may be by now, I know it's something going on over the weekend with it, but you're kind of in those final stages. This is just where it's at. The official visit happened. It went great. You kind of iron out all the remaining details, and signing day is in 2 weeks. I'd be very, very surprised at this stage if he ended up at Michigan. And if he does, it will be the most outlandish NIL number that anyone has ever heard and couldn't even have fathomed.
I have said that for some time now, that it's the only thing that could take Bryce Underwood from LSU would be the Godfather offer, the offer you don't refuse. Will someone drop that in his lap in these next 2 weeks? We'll all wait and see. But LSU is very well positioned to make sure Bryce Underwood ends up a part of this class. They did lose a member of the class in Devin Harper. Shea Dixon will react to that and kind of dish a little bit on what LSU's backup plan is there, and also the latest on Jahkeem Stewart. That's coming up next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Mint Mobile. I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to crawl through a bed of hot coals just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I called them on it. Turns out it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. The longest part of the process was actually the time you'll spend on hold waiting to break up with your old provider. So to get started, go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. There you'll see that right now, all 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. All plans come with high-speed data, unlimited talk and text, delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contests. So find out how easy it is to switch to Mint Mobile and get 3 months of premium wireless service for $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. That's mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. Get your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. So LSU did, in fact, lose a commitment over the weekend. It came from offensive lineman Devin Harper out of North Louisiana, who flipped from LSU to Ole Miss. And Shea Dixon dished and told us why that happened. And apparently it was something that wasn't a surprise.
Devin Harper was expected. He just happened to announce it right after the game against Florida this past weekend. But that had been one that had already been in the books for a week prior. And Ole Miss made a big NIL push, and Matt, as we move towards rev share and teams kind of balancing out what they'll have and where it goes, if you're coming in the 11th hour and tripling up somebody's NIL offerings or package or however you want to describe it, there's not much a team that's organized everything out it can do in that spot. And then outside of that, I'd say, look, Mike Tyler's a tight end they have committed. They have a tight end in David LaFleur's son out of Sulphur, but Mike Tyler's from Columbia, and the Gamecocks have been going after him pretty hard in the past couple of months. So he could be one that you just say, I'm not shocked he stays home. And then Derek Meadows will visit here at the end of the season for that Oklahoma game, but he's visited Michigan, Notre Dame. He plays at Bishop Gorman, that's in Nevada, but he's from Michigan. He left Michigan to go play high school football at Gorman. So not a shock that he's looking at schools like Michigan and Notre Dame, who are back closer to home. The big shock was that he committed here in the first place. Everybody thought he was going to Notre Dame. So we'll see how those unfold. But by and large, and I've talked to most of these kids or their parents, I feel pretty good about how this final couple of weeks will go.
One quick follow-up on Devin Harper. You said that was expected. It was just the timing with right after the Florida loss. How big of a loss is that in this LSU class when you look at offensive line? Might they be looking to replace him with another lineman?
Definitely. And look, they're still pushing for Solomon Thomas, one of the top offensive linemen in America. He's been committed to FSU. And he's been firm. He's been one of the kids in that class. Kudos to him, who has stood by him every week and just said, look, I'm committed to the program. But everybody's been pushing for him because he is talented. And he was at Florida last weekend, saw that game. But now this weekend, he's supposed to be coming over to LSU, or at least they were working on it, he said. So if he pops up, that would be good news. I don't know if any team can pull him away from FSU, but we'll see how it goes. Yes, Devin Harper is a great lineman. I think he was going to be a guard. He's having a nice senior year, so like you want that because you need depth there, you need help there. But the good news is Carius Kern, who I think will finish as a 5-star with us. He's ranked number 29 in the country right now, and we'll have 32 5-stars by the end of it. We kind of expand as we go on. So once you get a 5th star, you're pretty unlikely to lose it, and people aren't jumping back and forth between 5-star and 4-star. He's in that range. So he's the number 2 interior lineman in the country. And Charles Tower and Cody Blair, who run our national rankings, they've watched every kid. They have all the testing, and they said it isn't close, that he's the most athletic in the country, and he's a very good run blocker. He plays some DT as well. So he's one to watch for. Tyler Miller as well, coming out of South Mississippi, and then you've got Bordelon committed. I do think they'd like another, but none of this changes the reality that we knew they're going to need to go back into the portal and probably find some help, at least at one of the.
One of the guard spots, what Shea was saying there, one of the things worth keeping in mind, and I have mentioned this and I'll continue to mention it, Emory Jones apparently is at least considering a return to LSU. You're not going to retain Will Campbell. But apparently some of the feedback from the NFL is they want to see Emory Jones at guard. And so there's a chance you could see Emory Jones return and play guard for LSU next season. Now, that would leave Tyree Adams and Weston Davis very likely as your tackles. You'd still have another guard spot that you'd have to fill, and it could be a freshman like Carius Kern, or more than likely LSU would go into the transfer portal and try to sign an elite starting caliber interior offensive lineman. I think that is absolutely something on their list. And don't miss that as well, because Shea just said Carius Kern could end up with a 5th star from on 3. So if you're scoring at home, Bryce Underwood, DJ Pickett, Harlem Berry, Cade Phillips. That's 4 you have committed right now, with the possibility of Jahkeem Stewart, which would be 5. And if Carius Kern gets his 5th star, that would be 6. 5 stars. Speaking of Jahkeem Stewart, here was the latest.
I think he's having the time of his life. He was just out at USC for that OV. Shared pictures, hanging out with Juju Watkins. I think, he got the whole tour of everything that USC has to offer. And now he is back to, I think maybe Oregon. No, Ohio State is his final visit, and that's in 2 weeks, I believe.
Yeah, for the Michigan game, right?
Right. I don't know if he's back to Oregon this weekend or something else, but it's going to come down, in my opinion, to this grouping of LSU, obviously. LSU, USC, Oregon, Ohio State. That's the teams he gave visits to. Alabama, Georgia, none of those teams have really been in the mix at this stage. So he's going to have fun. All of these schools are going to have some confidence, but I'm going to wait till the dust settles, because I know what Frank Wilson can do in New Orleans. I know how much they put into this one, and I want to see where things are at, because his LSU official visit went very well, and you'll notice there wasn't a lot of public talk on the Jahkeem side about him and how much he experienced on the visit, what all happened, and I think that we might be in for kind of nobody knowing going into it, but LSU feeling quietly confident about what the result will be.
One thing that I will add there is I was told that there are 3 prospects that LSU are absolute must lands for LSU. It's Bryce Underwood, DJ Pickett, and Jahkeem Stewart. And LSU is prepared to do what they have to do to make sure they land those 3 prospects. So Shea saying it there, we probably won't get an answer until signing day. It'll be quiet all the way until the end, although LSU will feel quietly confident. I think the reason they're going to feel quietly confident is the way that they feel confident all along that Bryce Underwood and DJ Pickett will retain their commitments to LSU. If the player loves your school, your program, your coaches, everything about it, and the money makes sense, there's not really much reason to leave, unless someone comes and dumps the Godfather offer. Now, there is that component, which I do want to talk about, which is a new variable in this cycle that I'll explain next. And Shea will give us some insight on what he believes LSU's transfer portal strategy will be. We'll wrap up with that. Locked on LSU, your team every day. I was so excited when this popped up onto our ad read calendar. You know, if you struggle to find the perfect gift during the holidays, you got to check out Skylight Frames. You know, maybe gift giving isn't your love language. You overthink it. That's very hard for me, quite honestly. I almost feel like Seinfeld sometimes, just give someone a box of cash. But a couple of years ago, we gave my mom a Skylight Frame. So I'm one of 3 children. My sister and her family and their 4 kids live in Kansas. My brother and his family, his wife, their 4 kids, they live in Lafayette. My mom is still here in Baton Rouge with my dad, and you know, my wife and I live in Baton Rouge. But one of the things that has been amazing is her Skylight Frame, and we gave it to her 2 years ago, and it's incredible. There's an app, or you can send pictures to this digital frame via an email address. So if you take a picture on your phone, you can just email that picture to the Skylight address, and it automatically pops up on her frame. So she keeps up with all of her grandkids all year long, anytime there's anything going on in our lives. It's been an amazing gift to stay connected. So if you're tired of wasting money on useless clutter that no one really needs, and you're trying to find a great gift for someone that might even be hard to buy for, you got to check out Skylight Frames. It's the perfect gift. Skylight Frame is the touch screen digital photo frame that your whole family will love. You can upload thousands of photos with your phone, and you can watch them appear in seconds. It's so easy to use. Setup literally takes 60 seconds. There's a QR code. You scan it, just boom, 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 and all of a sudden you're uploading photos. It's seamless sharing. You can invite friends and family. Like I mentioned, my mom has an email address to her frame whereby all of us have that address. I can take a picture on my phone, tap it, email it to the Skylight address, and boom, it immediately appears in seconds on her Skylight Frame. It's incredible. Also, there's a touch screen on there, which is a total game changer. You can swipe through photos. You can tap to see new photos. You can tap the heart button to say thank you to the sender. If you just got to try it out, y'all. And right now, there's a special limited time offer for our listeners. You can get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com/college. Again, that's SKYLIGHTFRAME, skylightframe.com/college. And you can get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/college. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So as we come down the stretch here, there's 2 more things that I want to touch on. Number one, we've referred to several times teams maybe making a Godfather offer. Please keep in mind, with the NCAA House settlement and the agreement for revenue sharing going in place on July the 1st, effectively, what will happen, what is assumed will happen, again, there's still a lot of details that'll be worked out, but what is assumed will happen is when everyone will now be capped on what they can share in their revenue, that effectively makes collectives null and void. The aggressive fundraising for collectives now become obsolete because everyone is capped on what they can spend through a revenue share. Now, traditional and legitimate NIL can still happen. A business can go to a player and work an NIL deal. And so there's a lot of skeptics that say, and pessimists who might say, well, of course, there's going to be teams that skirt the rules and find a way to funnel dollars to businesses to get them to that athlete, however it may work. And that may happen. And we'll see ultimately if the NCAA has any jurisdiction, if people start breaking rules. So far, they haven't. But that remains to be seen. What is happening now is these collectives that have raised funds and have these funds in their coffers, they know effectively come July 1, when rev share is scheduled to begin, all the money in their coffers have to be spent by then because they're not going to be allowed to overspend once rev share starts. So the thought is, okay, prepay or give an advance, so to speak, to these athletes now with the money in your coffers. So you look at someone like Devin Harper, the offensive lineman who just flipped from LSU to Ole Miss, and you heard what Shea said there. Well, if someone comes in and they're making a double, triple, quadruple an offer, well, you have to make a decision if you're going to match it or let that player walk. This week, 2 players, Alabama commitments, flipped to Nebraska. Well, if Nebraska's sitting on a big pile of money and they want to overpay for someone in the middle of Alabama's class, Alabama has to make a decision. Do we match it or do we let them walk? Well, you let them walk if that's the way it goes. So I think schools are going to have to make those decisions. It's just something worth watching that you could have an enormous amount of money change hands between now and July 1st when rev share starts. Now, of course, that also includes the portal window, which is about to open up as well, the first portal window. And as we started, I told you, one mistake LSU made a year ago is they were not nearly aggressive enough in the first portal window. The Tigers landed 8-9 players out of the portal, but how many of them have been true impact guys? Yes, CJ Daniels has probably been your best. Gio Paez has been a starter. Jordan Gilbert has been a starter. Xavier Thomas came in and has contributed for you. But how many difference makers out of the portal did you add? That's a problem. And that's something that Shea Dixon and I talked about that LSU is going to fix.
Same page.
Mm-hmm.
If the plan is to take 5 to 10 guys, Matt, which Brian Kelly stuck by, he said, I want to sign 25 to 30 high school guys. They have 26 right now. I want to sign 5 to 10 portal guys. They signed 9 a year ago. I can count 3 or 4 that are helping you. That 4 that start right now, the number is lower of the ones I would say that are really helping you, on the field weekend being big impact players. Where does that number have to be is my question, because I think that if you're signing 9 to 10 in this current position, Matt, you can't, it almost feels like 7, 8, like not everyone's going to hit, but 7 or 8 of them might need to be really impact players or, at a position blocking tight end where you have to have it, whatever it is. You can't be at a hit rate of under 50% again. And I'll let you share your thoughts there, but I think that's really gone. That went sideways for them a year ago. It didn't the year prior. They hit on a lot of those guys, and a lot of them are still here starting for them, but they need to make sure this cycle it is a very focused approach on, hey, how can we go out and get guys that can impact this team next year?
It is not just a matter of they understand they missed the mark. They had money in the collective to spend. They didn't spend it, especially aggressively in that first portal window. And you are seeing LSU pay the consequence for it. You are thin on the offensive line. Garrett Dellinger gets hurt. Tyree Adams is hurt. Paul Mabenga's in there. You are thin on the line. You don't have a blocking tight end to back up Mason Taylor after Mac Markway left in the portal. You added a safety in Jordan Gilbert who has been starting for you, but that's not a guy that's an all SEC caliber safety. Gio Paez is starting for you. JVR Suggs is part of your defensive tackle rotation, but really those are rotational guys. And you're honestly starting a 270-pound tweener in Paris Shand who's kicked in and is playing tackle for you at 270 pounds. You are not where you need to be on this roster. And a big reason why is you weren't aggressive enough in that first portal window a year ago. they are committed to changing that, at least out verbally. They are singing the right tune, that they are committed to changing that this year. So expect LSU to be very aggressive in retaining the top of its signing class, and expect LSU in the first portal window to be aggressive in signing impact transfers out of the portal. Just a couple of weeks away from that early signing period on December the 4th, and we will have every update as we count you right down to it. Hey, thanks so much for making us your first listen every single day. Now for your second listen, you could go catch Locked On SEC. Check out my guy Chris Gordy, holding no punches, covering the best conference in college football. You can find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you are on podcasts, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and leave your comments below. We always appreciate that. It's one of the best ways to help us grow is to leave your comments below. And let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you every single day for Locked On LSU, your team every day.